have all of my figures built, and I've left the structures that I used to build them on in place. I haven't got all my labels in, but that's pretty quick. And I'll show you what I mean by the characteristics need to remain on the figure even when the figure is dragged around. Because I've built all of my figures using transformations that require parallelness and perpendicularness and congruence to remain even when the vertices are dragged around, this rectangle will always be a rectangle, etc., etc., etc. I built the parallelogram from one triangle and a rotation around the midpoint of the diagonal. I built the rhombus on a pair of perpendicular lines, and out of a right triangle that was reflected once, twice, 3 times. What did I build the square with? I think I built the square from a segment that was rotated once, twice, 3 times, each at a 90-degree transformation that guaranteed it stayed 90 degrees even when I grabbed it and dragged it around. I built this rectangle from a segment that was translated by a vector to a point on a perpendicular line, and then used the polygon tool to draw a polygon around the 4 points. I built the trapezoid on a pair of parallel lines, and I built the right trapezoid by building, the isosceles trapezoid by building this right trapezoid right here, and I'll show you that it's a right trapezoid. Because that was built on a pair of perpendicular lines, that center line, and then I reflected this piece over that vertical line and created an object that must be isosceles, because when you move the original, or the image, the pre-image that is, then the image moves along with it for each of these figures, which is how we guarantee the congruence stays when the figure is dragged around and the parallelness. Now, to clean up this drawing, I've got to go turn some objects off. The structures that they were built on can be turned off. The axes can be turned off. And we can make the construction lines invisible. So this is part of cleaning up the final project. Now, this being the supported performance, your take-home performance for Unit 7, accuracy will be graded. I can turn this vector off on my rectangle. So clean it up. First, make sure that the properties of each figure remain. I'm going to drag your vertices around to make sure your object is indeed the object you've said it's supposed to be. I'm going to make sure you have all 6 figures that are listed on your quadrilaterals page, all of the special quadrilaterals. I'm missing one here because I've chosen to do 2 isosceles figures, or 2 trapezoid figure. So check page 431 to see which one I might be missing. And then go around and turn things off. I've got one point on top of another. I don't need 2 points, and I'd really rather not show that this is a reflection, so I'm going to rename it M, and I'm going to rename S prime Q. So this rectangle would now be named RSQM, or MQSR, or we could start at another point as long as we name it in order from vertex to vertex to vertex. We go in order around the figure. If you'd like catchy names for your rectangle, if you want a rectangle named rect, then go ahead and change the name simply by right-clicking and renaming your points, your vertices. Now the decoration tool can be used in a couple of different ways. We've seen this on at least one of the videos, and you had some help with this in class. Sometimes it works by clicking on the figure itself, but sometimes it doesn't. See, in this case, the decoration tab simply didn't come up. So I'm going to find segment A prime over here, and I'm going to go to these object properties, and I didn't get my object properties here, so I'm just going to click around until I find something that works. Sometimes the easiest thing to do is simply to put a new segment in, and that's A sub 1. I can go to its object properties, and I can decorate it, and it lands right on top of the segment that was there. Now, one of the things I'd like you to do is to really make a professional drawing. I'm going to add these diagonals. Now, the interesting thing about the diagonals of a parallelogram is that they bisect each other. So I like the segment that goes from B to D. That's segment C sub 1. I see by that label when I hover over it. So I'm going to go to the object properties for C sub 1, decoration tool. I would like to mark it congruent to the segment that goes from B prime to D. So if I hover over these, B prime to D is segment D sub 1. And I've marked its other half with one tick mark, so I'm looking for the single tick mark decoration. So that's what I'd like you to do for your finished take-home performance. Now remember, this is a test score. So the idea is that accuracy is important. Properties, decoration. I've used the single and the double, so I'm going to use the triple. I want the segment that goes from D to C, that's segment F sub 1. And I have kind of a dilemma. I don't have a mark left to use on this corner, on this side. So I'm going to have to figure something out here. I don't want to point. That was incorrect. And I'm going to move around the figure. My square is also a rhombus, so it has the properties of both a square and a rhombus. Let's go ahead and mark the angle made by the diagonals. It's going to be perpendicular. Let's mark the angle made by the diagonals of the rhombus. It's going to be perpendicular. The angles on the inside of the rectangle will be 90-degree angles. Oops. Apparently it goes counterclockwise. Same with the square. One of the properties we will pay attention to is that if two lines are parallel, I'm not getting my decorations box here, so I would like the segment that goes from P to Q triple prime, segment P prime. I feel like my object properties box isn't coming up because I have two segments highlighted over here. and I only want one. That wasn't the case. So I'm just going to throw a segment right on top of these two. M sub 1. I'm going to go to my properties. There's my decoration tool, and I'm going to mark this parallel. Do this. I'm getting the whole figure. I only want one segment. N sub 1. Object properties, decoration, parallel. Now I was told that we're going to have trouble marking these both congruent and parallel. So I can throw another segment on top of here. And that's T sub 1. It's highlighted. And I would like to mark it as congruent as well as parallel. So let's see how that works. I have an arrow and a congruence mark. So I'm going to throw another segment on top of this one. And it is segment A sub 2. It's highlighted. It highlights itself right after you make it so that it's easy to find. Don't need a point in there. And I see this funky angle showed up at some point, so I'm gonna try to turn that object off. So I don't have my definitions in here. I need to finish that, and I've got to turn off some of these labels. I don't really love that label. And I'm just gonna move around the figure and add some properties, fix some things, make sure that this dynamic illustration remains accurate even when I move the vertices around. Wrong segment. So I'm going to clear the portions over here. I don't want anything highlighted, so I'm going to go to this one and click around until it turns off. And this is the segment I want for my trapezoid because I want to mark the two bases parallel. I don't need to worry about congruent in this case. Because that's not the case, that's not a characteristic of the trapezoid. It's easier just to throw a new segment on. Go to the properties of that new segment. Decoration tool, add parallel. So if you've got a drawing from Monday that already has all of these decorations on it, then play around with a new tool. If we go to the properties of this polygon, we can change the color of the polygon itself. And it appears I've only changed the color of one side of the polygon. So let's click on the other side, change its color too. And see if you can't make your diagram just simply more beautiful. Oh, I don't need a new point. So that's the idea, to really put the details on this drawing and keep going. This is a performance task, so you're expected to spend some quality time on it.